The signal came at 3 in the morning. It cut through the silence of space like a knife through paper. Deep beneath the mountains of Seoul, inside Earth's largest communication center, machines began to scream. Dr. Yuna Choi was the first to hear it. She had been sleeping at her desk, her coffee cold and forgotten beside her keyboard. The alarm pulled her from dreams of home, of her mother's cooking, of summer rain. She blinked at her screen and saw something impossible. The signal was not from any satellite. It was not from any space station or probe. It came from somewhere far beyond their solar system, from a place humans had never reached. "Wake everyone," she whispered to her assistant. "Wake everyone now." Within an hour, the room was full. Scientists, military officers, and government officials stood shoulder to shoulder, watching as the AI translation system worked on the strange message. The signal contained patterns, structures, and what appeared to be language. Something intelligent had sent this message. Something that was not human. The translation took 6 hours. When it finished, no one spoke for a very long time. The message was simple. It was a cry for help. "To any who receive this signal, we are the Lunari. Our world is burning. The Vorn Dominion has come to take everything from us. We have no weapons, we have no warriors, we have only hope. We searched the stars for anyone who might answer, and we found you. We found Earth. We have seen your history, we know what you are. We know what you can do. Please, if there is any kindness in your hearts, any courage in your souls, help us. We are dying." The voice belonged to someone called Ambassador Vila. The recording showed a creature unlike anything on Earth. She was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow. Her eyes were large and filled with tears. Behind her, fires burned and buildings fell. The United Earth Council met within the day. Leaders from every nation gathered in a great hall, their faces serious and worried. The question before them was simple but heavy. Should humanity answer? Some said no, this was not their fight. Earth had its own problems. Why should they risk their people for strangers from another world? The journey would take weeks. The enemy was unknown. It could be a trap. Others said yes. If humanity turned away from those in need, what did that say about them? What kind of species would ignore a cry for help simply because it was difficult or dangerous? The debate went on for hours. Voices rose and fell. Fists hit tables. Papers scattered. And through it all, one man sat quietly in the corner, watching and listening. His name was Jun-Ho Kim. He was 42 years old, and his hair was beginning to turn gray at the edges. He wore the uniform of Earth's military, but his eyes looked tired. He had seen too much death in his life, too much pain. He had lost his younger brother in the last border war, a conflict that had nearly torn humanity apart before they finally found peace. Now someone was asking for help, someone weak and afraid, someone who had nowhere else to turn. Jun-Ho stood up. The room went quiet. "I will go," he said. His voice was calm but firm. "Give me a ship and a team. We will answer this signal." The council members looked at each other. Some seemed relieved. Others seemed afraid for him. "Captain Kim," said the council leader, "you understand what you are volunteering for. We know nothing about these Vorn. We know nothing about their strength, their numbers, or their weapons. You could be walking into death." Jun-Ho nodded slowly. "I have walked into death before. I am still here." The council approved his request. Jun-Ho would lead a team of 5. They would take Earth's fastest ship, a vessel called the Phoenix, painted black as night. They would cross the galaxy and find the Lunari. They would do what humans had always done when faced with impossible odds. They would fight. Jun-Ho chose his team carefully. He needed the best, and he found them. Lieutenant Sora Park was his second in command. She was 35, with sharp eyes and a mind that could solve puzzles faster than any computer. She had studied every war in human history, every battle, every strategy. She knew how to win when winning seemed impossible. Sergeant Minyu Lee was his heavy weapons expert. He was a large man, quiet and strong. He rarely spoke more than a few words at a time, but when he fought like a storm. His loyalty was absolute. He had served under Junho for 10 years and had never once let him down. Corporal Hana Yoon was the team medic. She was small and gentle, with a kind smile that could calm even the most frightened patient. But she was also a brilliant scientist who understood alien biology better than almost anyone on Earth. She could heal wounds and study new species at the same time. Private Tiho Beek was the youngest member of the team. He was only 24, but his skills with technology were legendary. He could hack any system, break any code, and build devices from scraps and spare parts. He was nervous about the mission, but he trusted his captain completely. 5 people, 1 ship, a galaxy of distance to cross. On the night before they left, Junho stood alone on the launch platform looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying. Somewhere out there, a voice was crying in the darkness, hoping someone would hear. He thought of his brother. He thought of the promise he had made at his grave. He would protect the innocent. He would stand between the weak and those who would harm them. He would never let fear stop him from doing what was right. Sora walked up beside him. She held a tablet in her hands, filled with data about the Lunari and the Vorn. "I studied everything we received," she said quietly. "The Vorn have conquered over 40 species. They are brutal and efficient. No one has ever stopped them. No one has ever even slowed them down." Junho did not look away from the stars. "Then they have never met us." Sora smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile, but it was a determined one. "No, they have not." The next morning, the Phoenix lifted off from Earth. Millions of people watched from below, their eyes following the black ship as it climbed higher and higher into the sky. Some prayed, some cheered, some simply stood in silence, wondering if they would ever see those 5 brave soldiers again. Inside the ship, the team prepared for the long journey ahead. They checked their weapons, studied their maps, and tried to rest. But sleep did not come easily. Each of them knew that they were flying toward something terrible. Each of them knew that they might not return. But none of them wanted to turn back. Hana sat in the medical bay, organizing her supplies. She thought about the Lunari, about creatures who had no concept of war. How frightened they must be. How confused and lost. She wanted to help them. She wanted to show them that they were not alone. Minyu sat in the cargo hold, cleaning his rifle for the 100th time. He did not think about the future. He did not worry about death. He simply prepared. When the time came to fight, he would be ready. Tiho sat at his computer, studying Vorn technology from the little data they had received. They were advanced, but not impossibly so. He could find weaknesses. He could give his team every advantage possible. And Junho sat in the captain's chair, watching the stars streak past the window as the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed. 3 weeks. That was how long the journey would take. 3 weeks to prepare for a battle against an enemy they had never faced. He closed his eyes and made a silent promise to the unknown voice in the darkness. "We are coming," he whispered. "Hold on, we are coming." The Phoenix dropped out of faster-than-light speed, and the team saw hell. The Lunari homeworld was burning. Great cities that must have taken centuries to build were now nothing but smoke and ash. Ships scattered across the sky like frightened birds, running in every direction. And behind them, hunting them down one by one, were the warships of the Vorn Dominion. Junho stood at the bridge window, his hands tight at his sides. He had seen war before. He had seen death and destruction. But this was something different. This was not a battle between 2 armies. This was slaughter. The Lunari had no weapons, no fighters, no way to defend themselves. They were simply running and dying. "How many ships?" he asked quietly. Sora checked her screens. Her face was pale. "I count 12 Vorn warships in this area alone. There could be more elsewhere. They are targeting the refugee transports, the ones carrying civilians." Tiho looked up from his station. "Captain, I am picking up a transport ship nearby. It has 300 life signs. A Vorn patrol vessel is moving to intercept. They will reach it in 4 minutes. 4 minutes, 300 lives. Junho did not hesitate. Take us in. We board the Vorn ship and stop them. The Phoenix screamed through space, faster than anything the Vorn had ever seen. The patrol vessel was large and ugly, covered in spikes and weapons. It was built for war, built to frighten and destroy. Inside were warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds without defeat. They had never faced humans. The Phoenix locked onto the patrol vessel and cut through its hull with precision lasers. The breach was clean and fast. Before the Vorn could even understand what was happening, 5 figures in black armor dropped into their ship. Junho hit the ground first, his rifle already firing. 2 Vorn soldiers fell before they could raise their weapons. They were huge creatures, standing 8 feet tall with thick armored skin that looked like rock. Their eyes were red and filled with rage, but rage was not enough. Sara moved beside him, calling out enemy positions before they even appeared. 3 on the left, 2 coming from above, 1 trying to flank from the rear. Her voice was calm, almost bored. She had studied war her entire life. This was simply another puzzle to solve. Minyu stepped forward and became death itself. His heavy weapon roared, cutting down Vorn soldiers like they were made of paper. He moved slowly, steadily, never wasting a single shot. When one Vorn charged at him with a blade, Minyu caught the blade in his armored hand, crushed it, and threw the creature into a wall. Hana stayed close to the team, her medical kit ready. But she also carried a pistol, and she used it well. When a wounded Vorn tried to attack from the floor, she put him down with 2 quick shots. Her face was sad but determined. She did not enjoy killing, but she would not let her team die. Tiho ran to the ship's control room, his fingers dancing across alien keyboards. "I am shutting down their weapons systems," he reported. "And I am sending a message to their other ships. I am telling them this patrol vessel has engine trouble and needs to fall back." "Will they believe it?" Junho asked, stepping over a fallen enemy. Tiho smiled slightly. "They will not know it is fake until we are long gone." The fight lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, every Vorn on the patrol vessel was dead or unconscious. The team had taken no serious injuries. They moved through the ship to the holding cells, where they found what the Vorn had already captured. Lunari prisoners, dozens of them. They were huddled in the darkness, their silver skin dull with fear and exhaustion. When the cell doors opened, they did not move. They expected death. Instead, they saw Junho. He removed his helmet and knelt down so he was at their level. "You are safe now," he said gently. "We are here to help." An elderly Lunari stepped forward. His name was Elder Korin, and he was a leader among his people. His eyes were filled with tears as he looked at the human before him. "Who are you?" he whispered. "What are you?" Junho stood and offered his hand. "We are humans from a world called Earth. We heard your distress call. We came to help." Korin took the hand slowly, as if afraid it might disappear. "You came," he said, his voice breaking. "We sent that message into the darkness, hoping anyone would hear, and you came." The team escorted the prisoners back to the Phoenix and then flew to the nearby refugee transport. 300 Lunari watched as the small black ship docked with their vessel. Among them was Ambassador Vila, the one who had sent the original message. She was exactly as she had appeared in the recording, tall, silver, and graceful. But now her eyes were wider than before. She stared at the 5 humans who walked onto her ship, still wearing their combat armor, still carrying their weapons. "You are the ones," she said slowly. "You are the ones who answered." Junho nodded. "We are." Vila looked at each member of the team. At Sara, who was already studying the ship's layout. At Minyu, who stood like a mountain of muscle and steel. At Hana, who was checking the passengers for injuries. At Tiho, who was connecting his devices to their systems. 5, Vila said quietly. We expected a fleet, we expected thousands, and you sent 5. 5 was enough for today, Junho replied. Vila shook her head in wonder. The Vorn are the most feared warriors in the galaxy. They have destroyed civilizations. They have broken empires. How can 5 of you fight them? Sara answered without looking up from her work. The Vorn are strong. They are brutal. They use fear as a weapon and numbers as a shield, but they have weaknesses. They are overconfident. They do not adapt quickly. They have never faced an enemy who fights the way we do. And how do you fight? Minyu spoke, his voice low and rough like gravel. We fight to win. Vila did not fully understand, but she saw the truth in their eyes. These humans were not afraid. They were not angry or bloodthirsty. They were simply ready to face an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for generations. Hana finished treating a wounded Lunari child and walked over to Vila. Her smile was warm and kind. Ambassador, we know you have been through something terrible. We cannot undo what has happened, but we can help you survive. We can protect you while you find somewhere safe. Vila's eyes filled with tears. Why? Why would you risk your lives for us? We are strangers. We are not even the same species. What do you gain from this? Junho thought about the question for a long moment. He thought about his brother, about the wars humanity had fought among themselves, about the millions of lives lost to hatred and greed. He thought about how close they had come to destroying their own world before they finally learned to work together. We gain nothing, he said finally. That is not why we do it. Then why? Because you needed help, because you asked, because somewhere in the universe someone should answer when the innocent cry out in the darkness. He paused and looked out the window at the burning world beyond. We have done terrible things to each other, my people. We have fought wars that killed millions, but we have also learned from those mistakes. We have learned that true strength is not about conquering or destroying. It is about protecting. It is about standing up for those who cannot stand for themselves. Vila was silent for a long time. Then she bowed her head, a gesture of deep respect among her people. We chose well, she whispered. When we searched the stars for help, we chose well. The Phoenix led the refugee transport away from the burning homeworld, toward a small moon where other survivors had gathered. Along the way, they destroyed 2 more Vorn patrol vessels. Each battle was quick and decisive. Each victory gave the Lunari a little more hope. Word began to spread among the refugees. Whispers of strange warriors from a distant star. Warriors who fought like demons but protected like angels. Warriors who asked for nothing in return except the chance to help. When the ships finally reached the refugee moon, Elder Korin gathered his people to greet them. Thousands of Lunari stood in the dusty landing field, watching as the 5 humans stepped off their ship. Korin walked forward and did something no Lunari had done in 10 generations. He got down on his knees and pressed his forehead to the ground. Thank you, he said, his voice loud enough for all to hear. Thank you for coming when no one else would. Junho reached down and helped the old man to his feet. Do not kneel to us. We are not your rulers or your gods. We are just soldiers, and the fight is not over yet. He looked up at the sky, where the distant lights of Vorn warships still flickered like evil stars. They will come for you again, he said, and when they do, we will be here. We will stand between you and the darkness. We will fight until we cannot fight anymore. Korin squeezed his hand tightly. Then we will stand with you. We do not know how to fight, but we will learn. You have given us something we lost long ago. What is that? The old man smiled through his tears. Hope. Warlord Drax sat on his throne of black stone and listened to the report. His red eyes burned with a fire that made his officers tremble. He was the most feared commander in the Vorn Dominion, a warrior who had personally killed over 1,000 enemies with his own hands. He had conquered 12 worlds and crushed every rebellion against Vorn rule. Nothing had ever stopped him. Nothing had ever even slowed him down. Until now. 3 patrol vessels, he said, his voice like thunder. 3 of my ships destroyed by a single enemy craft. Tell me how this happened." The officer before him shook with fear. "Warlord, the attackers were unexpected. Our sensors show only 5 life signs aboard the enemy ship. 5 individuals boarded our vessels and killed everyone inside." Drax leaned forward. His massive body was covered in scars from centuries of battle. His armor was made from the bones of his defeated enemies. He was a monster in every sense of the word. 5, he repeated slowly. 5 attackers defeated my warriors. What species are they? They call themselves humans, Warlord. They come from a world called Earth, in an uncharted region of the galaxy. We have no previous records of contact with their kind. Drax stood up. He was nearly 9 feet tall, towering over everyone in the room. He walked to a screen and pulled up the combat recordings from the destroyed patrol vessels. What he saw made his blood run cold. The humans moved like nothing he had ever seen. They were small compared to Vorn, weak in body, soft in flesh. But they fought with a speed and precision that seemed impossible. They anticipated attacks before they came. They adapted to new situations in seconds. They showed no fear, no hesitation, no mercy. In one recording, a human female called out the positions of Vorn soldiers before they even appeared around corners. In another, a human male with heavy weapons held a corridor against 20 Vorn and did not fall back a single step. In the final recording, the human leader faced 3 Vorn at once and killed them all in under 10 seconds. Drax watched the recordings 3 times. Then he crushed the screen with his fist. "Find out everything about these humans," he commanded. "I want to know where they come from, how they fight, and what they fear. Then I will destroy them myself." His officers scattered to obey. Over the next several hours, Vorn intelligence gathered every piece of information they could find about Earth and humanity. What they discovered was disturbing. Humans were a young species, barely reaching into space. They had no empire, no conquered worlds, no history of galactic warfare. But they had something else. They had thousands of years of fighting each other. The reports spoke of conflicts called world wars that killed tens of millions. They described weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They told stories of humans fighting in jungles, deserts, mountains, and frozen wastelands. Humans who kept fighting even when they were starving, wounded, and outnumbered. Humans who never gave up, never surrendered, never stopped. Drax read every report carefully. For the first time in his long life, he felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it because he had not felt it in centuries. It was respect, and perhaps just a little bit of fear. He crushed that feeling immediately. He was Warlord Drax. He had broken empires. He would not be frightened by 5 tiny creatures from an unknown world. "Prepare my fleet," he ordered. 20 warships. We move on the refugee moon immediately. I will kill these humans myself and mount their heads on my wall. Far away on the refugee moon, Junho received the news from Tiho. "Captain, Vorn fleet activity has increased dramatically. Long-range sensors show at least 20 warships forming up. They are heading in our direction. Estimated arrival, 48 hours. Junho stood in the center of the refugee camp, looking at the thousands of Lunari who had gathered there. Elderly, children, families who had lost everything. They had nowhere else to run. This moon was their last hope. "Then we have 48 hours to prepare," he said. The team gathered in the command center, a small building that the Lunari had given them. Maps of the moon covered the walls. Sara was already marking defensive positions. "The geography is not ideal," she said, pointing at the map. "The colony is in a valley which limits our lines of sight, but we can use the surrounding hills as natural barriers. If we can funnel the enemy into narrow approaches, we can increase our effectiveness." "What about numbers?" Hana asked. 5 of us against 20 warships worth of troops. Even for us that is impossible." Junho nodded slowly. We cannot win a straight fight. We need to be smart. We need to use every advantage this terrain can give us. Tiho raised his hand. I can rig the infrastructure with traps, explosive devices, electronic jammers, false signals. I can turn this whole valley into a maze of death for anyone who does not know the way through. Do it, Junho said. Use everything we have. Minyu spoke quietly from the corner. What about the Lunari? They are not fighters, but they can help. Evacuation routes, medical support, communication. Every hand makes a difference. Hana stood up. I will train volunteers in basic medical response. If there are wounded, they need to know how to stabilize them until I can reach them. Sora added, I can teach evacuation protocols. When the attack comes, civilians need to know where to go and how to get there quickly without panic. Junho looked at his team with pride. They were not just soldiers. They were teachers, planners, and protectors. They understood that winning a battle was not just about killing enemies. It was about saving lives. Over the next 2 days, the refugee moon transformed. Tiho planted hundreds of devices throughout the valley. Some were bombs, some were jammers, some were simple tricks designed to confuse and delay. He mapped every trap and shared the safe paths only with the team and key Lunari leaders. Sora walked every inch of the terrain, memorizing sight lines and choke points. She identified 10 locations where a single defender could hold off dozens of attackers. She called them kill zones and marked them carefully on her map. Hana set up a medical station in the deepest part of the colony, protected by thick walls and heavy doors. She trained 50 Lunari volunteers in basic first aid. They were frightened but determined. For the first time in their lives, they were doing something to fight back. Minyu found a tall hill overlooking the main approach to the colony. He carried his heavy weapon to the top and set up a firing position. From there, he could see almost everything. He would be the first line of defense, the first warning of danger. And Junho walked among the Lunari, talking to them, reassuring them, giving them strength they did not know they had. One evening, a young Lunari child approached Minyu as he sat cleaning his weapon. The child was small, with big silver eyes full of curiosity and fear. "Why do you fight?" the child asked. Minyu stopped working and looked at the small creature. He was not good with words. He never had been. But something about the child's innocent question made him want to try. "Someone has to," he said finally. "Bad things happen when good people do nothing, so we fight. Not because we want to, but because if we do not, who will?" The child thought about this for a moment. "Are you scared?" Minyu considered the question honestly. Sometimes, fear is normal. It keeps you sharp. The important thing is not to let fear stop you from doing what is right. The child nodded slowly, then sat down beside the large human soldier. They stayed there together in silence, watching the stars slowly appear in the darkening sky. On the morning of the 3rd day, alarms began to sound. Tiho's voice came over the communication system, calm but urgent. "Contact confirmed. 20 Vorn warships have entered orbit. Drop pods are launching. Estimated landing time, 15 minutes. Junho grabbed his rifle and ran to the command center. His team was already there, armored and ready. Outside, Lunari civilians were moving quickly but calmly toward the evacuation shelters. Sora's training had worked. There was fear but no panic. A communication signal came through. The screen flickered to life, showing a face that made the Lunari in the room gasp with terror. Warlord Drax. His red eyes stared through the screen, burning with hatred and anticipation. His voice was deep and terrible. "Humans, I am Warlord Drax of the Vorn Dominion. You have interfered in our conquest. You have killed my soldiers. You have given false hope to creatures who were already dead. I offer you one chance. Surrender yourselves to me and I will spare the Lunari. They will be slaves, but they will live. Refuse, and I will kill every living thing on this moon, including you." The room was silent. Everyone looked at Junho, waiting for his response. He stepped forward until he was directly in front of the screen. His face showed no fear, no doubt, no hesitation. When he spoke, his voice was steady and cold. "Warlord Drax, I am Captain Junho Kim of Earth. I have heard your offer. Here is my answer." He paused and looked directly into those red burning eyes. "Come and take us." Then he cut the transmission. Sora smiled slightly. Well, that should make him angry. Junho checked his rifle one final time. Good. Angry enemies make mistakes. Outside, the sky began to fill with fire as hundreds of drop pods screamed down toward the moon's surface. The ground shook with their impact. The Battle of Refuge Moon had begun. Junho looked at his team, his family, the finest soldiers he had ever known. "Remember why we are here," he said. "Remember who we are protecting. Fight smart, fight hard, and do not die. That is an order." They nodded as one, then moved to their positions. 5 humans against an army. It should have been impossible. It should have been suicide. But as the first Vorn soldiers began to emerge from their drop pods, they had no idea what was waiting for them. They had conquered 40 species. They had broken every resistance. They had never known defeat. They were about to learn. The first wave of Vorn soldiers marched toward the colony with complete confidence. There were 200 of them, massive warriors in heavy armor, carrying weapons that could tear through steel. They had done this countless times before. Land on a world, crush any resistance, claim the survivors as slaves. It was simple. It was efficient. It had never failed. They walked directly into Minyu's kill zone. From his position on the hill, Minyu watched them through his weapon's scope. He counted them carefully, waiting for the perfect moment. When the main group was exactly where Sora had predicted they would be, he opened fire. The sound was like thunder. Heavy rounds tore through Vorn armor as if it was paper. Soldiers fell in waves, tumbling over each other in confusion. They tried to find cover, but there was none. Minyu had studied this ground for 2 days. He knew every rock, every ditch, every shadow. His weapon never stopped firing. In 3 minutes, the first wave was destroyed. On the command ship in orbit, Warlord Drax watched the battle feed with growing anger. "Send the second wave," he ordered. "Triple the numbers. Flank them from all sides." 600 soldiers dropped from the sky, landing in a wide circle around the colony. They approached from every direction at once, moving carefully now, using cover and coordination. They had learned from the first attack. They would not make the same mistake. But Tiho was ready for them. As the soldiers advanced through the rocky terrain, explosions began to tear through their ranks. Hidden devices detonated under their feet, behind their backs, above their heads. Smoke grenades blinded their sensors. Jammers disrupted their communications. What should have been a coordinated assault became chaos. In the confusion, Junho and Sora moved like ghosts. They appeared from nowhere, striking fast and disappearing before the Vorn could react. Junho's rifle barked 3 times and 3 soldiers fell. Sora called out targets before they emerged, guiding her captain through the battle like a conductor leading an orchestra. Together, they cut through squad after squad, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. "Third group coming from the eastern ridge," Sora reported calmly. 12 soldiers. They will reach the outer wall in 2 minutes. Junho sprinted toward the eastern ridge, his boots pounding against the dusty ground. He arrived just as the Vorn reached the wall. They saw him and raised their weapons, but he was faster. He dove behind a pile of rubble, rolled, and came up firing. 4 soldiers down. The rest tried to fall back, but Minyu's heavy weapon found them from across the valley. "Eastern ridge clear," Junho reported. Hana's voice came over the communication system. "Medical station is receiving wounded. Lunari volunteers are performing well. Keep them coming." In the depths of the colony, Hana worked without stopping. Her hands were steady as she treated burns, closed wounds, and saved lives. The Lunari volunteers around her moved with purpose, following the training she had given them. Every life saved was a victory against the Vorn. A wounded Lunari child was brought to her, crying and terrified. Hana knelt down and looked into those big silver eyes. "You are going to be okay," she said softly. "I promise. The scary part is almost over." The child nodded weakly, and Hana went to work. Outside, the battle grew more intense. The Vorn commanders realized that direct assault was not working. They changed tactics, bringing up heavy weapons to blast the colony from a distance. Massive artillery pieces began to fire, sending explosions tearing through buildings and defenses. "They are trying to destroy the colony directly," Tiho reported urgently. "If those artillery pieces keep firing, the shelters will not hold." Junho made a decision. "Sara, Minyu, cover me. I am going for the artillery." "That is suicide," Sora said flatly. "The artillery position is surrounded by at least 50 guards." "Then I will have to be very fast." Junho ran into the open, drawing fire from dozens of directions. Bullets screamed past his head. Explosions threw dirt and rock into the air. But he did not slow down. He moved in patterns that seemed random but were carefully planned, making himself impossible to target. Minyu's weapon roared, clearing a path through the guards. Sora tracked every enemy movement, calling out warnings that saved Junho's life a dozen times. Together, they pushed forward inch by inch until Junho reached the artillery position. There were still 20 guards around the massive weapons. Junho dropped his rifle, which was empty, and drew his sidearm and combat knife. What followed was brutal and fast. He moved among the Vorn like water, too quick to hit, too close for their large weapons to be effective. Bodies fell around him. The last guard tried to grab him with massive clawed hands, but Junho ducked under the swing and drove his knife into a gap in the armor. Silence fell over the artillery position. Junho planted explosive charges on each weapon, then ran. Behind him, the artillery exploded in a massive fireball that lit up the sky. The colony's shelters were safe, for now. But Warlord Drax had seen enough. "Prepare my personal transport," he ordered. "I am going down there myself. If my soldiers cannot kill 5 humans, I will do it with my own hands." The drop pod hit the ground like a meteor. When it opened, Drax stepped out into the smoke and fire of the battlefield. He was enormous, even larger than his soldiers, covered in ancient armor decorated with the skulls of his enemies. In his hands, he carried a blade that had killed more beings than anyone could count. He walked toward the colony, and Vorn's soldiers fell back to make way for him. He did not need them. He would finish this himself. Junho saw him coming. He stood in the center of the colony's main plaza, alone, waiting. His armor was damaged, his face bloody, his ammunition nearly gone. But he did not run. He did not hide. He stood his ground. Drax stopped 20 feet away. He looked at the small human before him and laughed. "You are the one who challenged me," he said, his voice booming across the plaza. "You are the one who told me to come and take you. Well, here I am. What will you do now, little creature?" Junho took a deep breath. "I will do what I came here to do. I will stop you." Drax laughed again. "How? Look at yourself. You are broken. You are finished. Your pathetic species has no future." "Maybe," Junho admitted, "but neither do you." He raised his sidearm and fired. The bullets hit Drax's armor and bounced off harmlessly. The warlord did not even slow down. He swung his massive blade, and Junho barely dodged, rolling to the side as the weapon carved a deep gash in the ground. The fight was not fair. Drax was larger, stronger, better armored. His blade could cut through anything, and he moved with the speed of a creature who had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing. Junho was human, fragile, mortal. But Junho was also smart. He did not try to match Drax's strength. Instead, he moved constantly, staying close where the warlord's size was a disadvantage. He struck at weak points in the armor, joints, sensors, exposed cables. Each hit was small, but they added up. Drax grew frustrated. He swung wildly, his blade cutting through walls and vehicles. "Stand still and die like a warrior," he roared. "Dying is not in my plans today," Junho replied. He saw an opening. A cable at the back of Drax's knee was exposed, damaged by an earlier shot. Junho dove forward, under a swing that would have cut him in half, and slashed with his knife. The cable severed and Drax stumbled. It was only a moment of weakness, but Junho took it. He jumped onto the warlord's back, driving his knife into a gap in the neck armor again and again. Drax roared in pain and rage, trying to throw him off, but Junho held on with all his strength. Finally, with a terrible cry, Drax fell. He lay on the ground, gasping, his red eyes dimming. Junho stood over him, exhausted but alive. "How?" Drax whispered. "How can this be? I have conquered empires. I have broken civilizations. How can one human defeat me?" Junho looked down at his fallen enemy. He felt no joy, no triumph, only sadness for all the lives this creature had destroyed. "Because I was not fighting for conquest," he said quietly. "I was not fighting for glory or power. I was fighting for the people behind me, for the innocent, for those who cannot fight for themselves. That is something you will never understand." Drax's eyes closed. He was not dead, but he was beaten. Junho looked up. The Vorn soldiers who had been watching stood in shock. Their invincible warlord had fallen. Their undefeated army had been stopped by 5 humans and a moon full of refugees. One by one, the Vorn began to retreat. They pulled back to their drop pods, back to their ships. The attack was over. In the colony behind him, Junho heard a sound he had not expected: cheering. The Lunari were cheering, crying, embracing each other. They had survived. Against impossible odds, they had survived. Sara appeared beside him, her armor scorched but her spirit unbroken. "You really cut it close that time, Captain." Junho smiled weakly. "I had good backup." Minyu walked up, his heavy weapon still smoking. He looked at the fallen warlord and nodded once. "Good fight." Tiho and Hana joined them, the whole team together again. They stood in the center of the plaza, surrounded by the wreckage of battle, and watched the Vorn ships retreat into the dark sky. "Is it over?" Hana asked quietly. Junho shook his head. "This battle is over, but the war is just beginning. The Vorn will be back. Others will come too, now that they know about us." "Then we will be ready," Sara said firmly. Junho looked at his team. They were wounded, tired, and far from home, but they were alive, and they had done something incredible. They had shown the galaxy that the innocent did not stand alone, that somewhere in the stars there were people willing to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. "Yes," he said, "we will be ready." The silence after battle is a strange thing. It is not peaceful. It is heavy, filled with memories of everything that happened. The screams, the explosions, the fear. It takes time for the quiet to feel real. Junho sat on a broken wall at the edge of the colony, watching the sun rise over the scarred landscape. The Vorn ships were gone. The enemy soldiers had fled. Warlord Drax had been taken prisoner, too wounded to resist. The Battle of Refuge Moon was over. But the cost was clear. Buildings lay in ruins. Craters marked the ground where explosions had torn through the earth. Lunari bodies were being carefully gathered by grieving families. Not everyone had survived. Not everyone had been saved. Hana walked up and sat beside him. Her medical uniform was stained with the silver blood of the Lunari, and her eyes were tired beyond words. She had worked through the entire night, treating wounds and saving lives. She had not slept in 2 days. "We lost 47, she said quietly. 47 Lunari civilians. I tried to save them all, but some wounds were too severe." Junho nodded slowly. "Every death is a tragedy, but thousands survived. Thousands who would have died if we had not come." "I know," Hana looked at the rising sun. I just wish we could have done more. We always wish that. It never gets easier. They sat together in silence, watching the light spread across the wounded moon. After a while, Sora joined them, followed by Minyu and Tiho. The team was together again, as they had been since the beginning. Reports from Earth just came in, Sora said. The Council is calling us heroes. News of the battle has spread across the planet. People are celebrating in the streets. Tiho smiled weakly. I guess we are famous now. I do not feel like a hero, Minyu said. His voice was rough, and his hands still carried the weight of the weapon he had used to kill so many. I feel tired. Heroes usually do, Junho replied. The ones who feel proud are usually not the real ones. A group of Lunari approached them, led by Ambassador Vila and Elder Korin. Behind them walked hundreds of survivors, gathering quietly in the plaza. They said nothing at first, simply standing there, watching the 5 humans who had saved them. Vila stepped forward. Her silver skin was dull with exhaustion, but her eyes shone with something deeper than gratitude. It was something like wonder. Captain Junho Kim, she said formally. On behalf of the surviving Lunari people, I wish to thank you and your team. What you have done will be remembered for as long as our species exists. You came when no one else would. You fought when you could have run. You bled for people you had never met. Junho stood and faced her. We did what was right. That does not require thanks. Perhaps not, but you have it anyway. Vila paused, gathering her thoughts. I must tell you something. Before the attack, I sent a message across the galaxy. I told every species, every civilization, every world about what was happening here. I told them that we had sent a distress call and that only one planet answered. Junho frowned slightly. What are you saying? I am saying that the galaxy now knows about humanity, about Earth, about what you did here. Vila's voice grew stronger. For generations, the Vorn Dominion has been unstoppable. Every species has either submitted or been destroyed. There was no hope. There was no resistance. But now, everyone knows that 5 humans defeated their greatest warlord. Everyone knows that the Vorn can be beaten. Elder Korin stepped forward. Already, we are receiving messages from other subjugated worlds. They are asking about you. They are asking if it is true. They are asking if they should fight back. You have not just saved us, Vila continued. You have given the entire galaxy something it lost long ago, hope. The humans looked at each other. They had come to save one species. They had not expected to become a symbol for dozens. That is a heavy responsibility, Sora said carefully. We are just soldiers. We are not leaders or diplomats. You do not need to be, Korin replied. You just need to be what you are. Warriors who fight for the innocent, protectors who ask for nothing in return. That is enough. That is more than enough. A young Lunari child pushed through the crowd and ran toward Minyu. It was the same child who had asked him why he fights. The child looked up at the big human with wide silver eyes. You stayed, the child said. You promised you would fight and you stayed. Minyu knelt down so he was at the child's level. I keep my promises. The child reached out and touched Minyu's armored hand. Will you come back? If the bad ones return, will you come back? Minyu looked at Junho. Junho nodded. Yes, Minyu said, we will come back. The child smiled, the first smile Minyu had seen from any Lunari since they arrived. It was small and fragile, but it was real. It was hope. Days passed. The team helped with reconstruction, using their skills to repair what they could. Tiho set up communication systems. Sora organized defensive planning for the future. Hana trained more medical volunteers. Minyu helped move heavy debris, his strength making work easier. And Junho walked among the people, listening to their stories, learning their names, remembering their faces. Every life mattered. Every survivor was proof that they had made a difference. Finally, the day came for them to leave. The Phoenix was repaired and ready. Earth was waiting for their return, but saying goodbye was harder than any of them expected. The entire colony gathered to watch them go. Thousands of Lunari stood in the fields, their silver skin reflecting the light of their new sun. They did not cheer. They simply watched, their silence speaking louder than any words. Vila stood at the front, her head held high. "You have changed everything," she said to Junho. "The galaxy will never be the same. The Vorn will try again, and others may come seeking to test humanity. Are you ready for that?" Junho looked back at the crowd, at the children, at the elderly, at the families who still had a future because 5 strangers had chosen to help. "We will be ready," he said, "and if anyone threatens the innocent again, they will find us standing in their way." Vila nodded. "Then perhaps there is hope for us all." The team boarded the Phoenix. The engines hummed to life. Through the window they could see the Lunari waving, their arms raised in farewell. Junho raised his own hand in response. The ship lifted off and climbed into the sky. The refugee moon grew smaller and smaller until it was just a dot of light among the stars. In the cockpit, the team was quiet for a long time. They were going home, but they had left part of themselves behind. They had found purpose in the darkness of space. They had discovered that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or weapons. It was compassion. It was the willingness to stand for those who could not stand alone. Sora broke the silence. "The council will want a full report. What are you going to tell them?" Junho thought about it. "The truth, that the universe is bigger than we imagined, that there are threats out there we never dreamed of, and that humanity has a choice to make. We can hide on our little world and hope no one notices us, or we can step forward and become something more." "What do you think they will choose?" "I think we already made that choice when we answered the distress call." Tiho looked up from his console. "Captain, I am picking up something strange, another signal." Junho turned. "Another distress call." Tiho nodded slowly, his face pale. "Yes, different species, different location, but the same message. They are asking for help." The bridge was silent. Everyone looked at Junho, waiting. He took a deep breath. He was tired. They all were. They had earned the right to go home, to rest, to recover. No one would blame them for saying no. But then he thought of the child who had smiled at Minyu, of the elder who had wept with gratitude, of the thousands of lives they had saved because they had chosen to answer. "Set a new course," he said quietly. Sora raised an eyebrow. "We have not been home in over a month. We are low on supplies. Half our equipment needs repairs." "I know." Junho looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, another voice was crying in the darkness. Another innocent species was waiting for someone to answer. But we are the only ones close enough to help, so we help. Minyu nodded once, agreed. Hana smiled tiredly. "I suppose I should restock the medical supplies from whatever we have left." Tiho was already calculating the new course. Estimated travel time, 12 days. Sora sighed, but there was pride in her eyes. "You know, Captain, one day you are going to get us all killed with your heroics." Junho smiled slightly. "Not today." The Phoenix changed course and jumped to faster-than-light speed, streaking across the galaxy toward another world in need. Behind them, the story of what they had done spread from system to system, the legend of the humans who answered when no one else would. On Earth, people looked up at the stars with new eyes. They had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew the truth. They were not alone, and in a galaxy full of darkness, humanity had chosen to be a light. The journey was far from over. More battles would come. More sacrifices would be made. The Vorn would seek revenge. Other empires would see humanity as a threat to be destroyed. But Captain Junho Kim and his team were not afraid. They had learned something precious on that distant moon. They had learned that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the choice to act despite the fear, to stand up when others would sit down, to fight when fighting seemed impossible. That was what made them human. That was what made them dangerous. And that was what made them heroes. Somewhere across the vast emptiness of space, another voice called out in the darkness, and humanity answered. They would always answer.